The handouts or review materials must be treated with utmost confidentiality. It shall be the responsibility of the person whose name appears therein that the handouts or review materials are not photocopied or in any way reproduced, shared, or lent to any person or disposed in any manner. Any handouts or review materials found in the possession of another person whose name does not appear therein shall be prima facie evidence of violation of RA 8293. Top-notch review materials are updated every 6 months based on the current trends and feedback. Please buy all recommended review books and other materials.
Hi, I'm GR Magallanes and welcome to the ID part of your IM Top-Notch lecture. So, let's go into septic shock. So, pag nag-aaral kayo, I suggest pull mo muna yung unahin nyo. Pull mo, then crit, and then this part. So, we start here with sepsis and septic shock. You have a 32-year-old male coming in for an 8-day history of cough and right-sided pleurisy. You have his x-ray right here. Meron siyang well-demarcated right upper lobe na infiltrate, mukhang consolidation. Yung history niya, meron siyang 4-day history of myalgia and profound malaise and fever after a drinking spree 14 days ago and was just found at the roadside, intoxicated, full of vomit. The patient had no comorbids, fairly young, but alcoholic and denies illicit drug use and smoking. At the ER, the patient is lethargic and can barely follow commands. Height and weight are as follows, and the BP shows that the patient is hypotensive, tachycardic, tachypneic, and febrile. He was previously seen at the district hospital 1 hour ago and was already given a total of 3 liters of plain MSS. So maganda naman yung resuscitation sa kanya, pero hypotensive pa rin yung patient. And syempre, pag ganyan, shock na siya, di ba? So, sepsis is the most likely cause of the shock of the patient because you have a focus, mukhang may pneumonia sa x-ray. And then, septic shock, likely from CAP-HR specifically. So, kanina, dun sa mga discussion natin ng types of circulatory shock, di ba, meron tayong distributive, hypovolemic, cardiogenic, and obstructive. Your septic shock will fall into distributive type of shock. Okay, so the most urgent step in septic shock is vasopressor administration. So you may want to stabilize the blood pressure of the patient first. So kahit nag-hydrate na and tama naman yung adequate naman yung fluid resuscitation, you might need to start your vasopressor. And the primary choice of vasopressor in septic shock is your norepinephrine. Second line would be either your vasopressin or your epinephrine. Vasopressin is now preferred over epinephrine because of the tachycardia. And if you want to start an inotrope, then you can start your dobutamine. Remember, nung sinabi ko dun sa shock lecture, you only start your dobutamine only if your blood pressure is at least 80/60 because of the concomitant na peripheral vasodilation effect nun. So once it hits more than 80/60, then you can start your dobutamine. So approach to septic shock, early diagnosis and assessment is the key. So kailangan mataas yung clinical suspicion mo. Before, nung student ako, we only use the Sears criteria. Ito yung temperature more than 38 or less than 36, heart rate more than 90, RR more than 20, PaCO2 na alkalotic na less than 32, WBC count, pwedeng leukocytosis more than 12K, or leukopenia na less than 4,000, or may leftward shift ka, meron kang more than 10% na immature band forms na nakikita sa peripheral blood smear. Now, you have to have 2 of these Sears criteria plus a focus on infection. So, kung meron ka nun, pwede mo nang i-label as sepsis. However, lang nalalaman nila dun sa Sears criteria, maraming pumapasok dyan na sepsis or marami rin siyang namimiss. So, it's neither sensitive or specific. Kaya na-invento yung ibang scoring systems. Isa na doon yung Q-SOFA and SOFA. The SOFA, mas matanda na to, pero marami kasi itong tinitingnang variables, PF ratio, may mga bilirubin pa nga dyan, platelet count, na hindi masyadong routinely ginagamit or lahat nakukuha at the onset, no? Especially if the patient is presenting at the ER. Kaya na-invento yung Q-SOFA. The Q-SOFA is more of pang-triage mo sa ER kung magsisepsis pathway ka ba? Especially right now na marami ng pathways, clinical pathways sa hospitals. Isa na doon yung sepsis pathway. So, ang kailangan mo lang 2 of the 3 variables. Medyo alanganin lang yung yung criteria. So you have an RR na dapat more than or equal to 22. Any alteration of sensorium, kahit GCS-14, papasok na siya kahit medyo confused yung patient. And if your if your blood pressure, systolic blood pressure, is at least, at most pala, 100 mmHg. So medyo, 'di ba, medyo nana yung kanyang criteria. Pero ang purpose kasi nito ay para mas marami kang nakukuha sa sepsis pathway. Wala kang nami-miss out na sepsis kasi mas mataas yung mortality kapag ikaw ay may nami-miss. So, paano ba nangyayari yung sepsis? So, it's just an unregulated inflammatory response in response to your pathogen. So, it happens when your innate immune system via your innate immune cells recognizes your pathogens. So, kahit bacteria, kahit virus, it gets your leukocytes activated, releasing the cytokines, and then your cytokines will produce the inflammation. So, among the effects of the inflammation, isa dun is yung endothelial damage and endothelial dysfunction. So, sa endothelial dysfunction, your capillary endothelium becomes leaky. So, you will have edema fluid seeping out of the vascular space, pushing into the interstitial space. So kapag ganyan ang nangyayari, nagkakaroon ka ng perivascular edema, the diffusion of the oxygen from the capillaries to the end organ tissues is impaired, such that nagkakaroon ka ng supply issue. Okay? Kasama din sa inflammation would be the activation of your endothelium. So akala natin dati yung endothelium para lang siyang inert na part ng capillaries. Ayun pala, marami palang nangyayari sa kanya. So, nagkakaroon ka ng platelet activation, platelet aggregation, and then when you have those things, it can also signal your WBC to adhere dun sa walls na yon, and then it can cause microthrombus formation. Ito yung mga microthrombi. Ito rin yung nangyayari dun sa COVID nung nakikita natin sa kanila na predominant, no? So you have thrombus formation, and when you have those thrombus, nagka-clog yung mga capillaries mo, lalong-lalo na dun sa end organ, and then you will have more supply problems, especially of your oxygen. If you have those things, you have leaky capillary, meron kang thrombus formation, giving you plugs, increasing the distance na kailangan i-traverse ng oxygen, you will have mitochondrial dysfunction. So, nangyayari na rito yung meron kang mismatch ng supply and demand. Your demand for energy is high and yet your supply is low. So, you will go into anaerobic metabolism, you will produce lactate, and your lactate, the acidosis will actually give you more hypotension, will give you impaired autoregulation. So you will have your hypotension, your peripheral vasodilation, and your hypovolemia. Okay? Giving you the septic shock, and then it's a vicious cycle. So you have to break that cycle. Yun yung kailangan natin. And ang kailangan mo doon, i-control mo yung source ng sepsis mo. So this is the SOFA criteria. Okay? So right now, sepsis is defined as a life-threatening organ dysfunction caused by a dysregulated host response to infection. So may interplay ka ng host and ng pathogen mo. And the response, if it's disorganized, hindi regulated, then you will have sepsis. So among the SOFA, ito yung mahabang part, di ba? So you will have a scoring system, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you have these systems. I will not go over the SOFA criteria na. Pero just to say, just be aware that you are scoring the GCS, coagulopathy, creatinine, BUN urea, yung mga BUN urea urine output as well, liver via your bilirubins, and cardiovascular, whether or not vasopressor requiring yung patient mo, or you measure your MAC. And for respiratory, you measure your TF ratio. Okay? So having said that, the diagnostics for sepsis will try to zero in on the focus of infection. Maghahanap ka sa ng focus. Aside from trying to prognosticate your patient. So you get your CBC, You get your urinalysis to check for UTI, you check for X-ray to check for pneumonia, your blood CS for bacteremia, your sputum ETA GSCS and urine CS, kailangan mo ng cultures, syempre, para targeted later on yung therapy mo. And for some centers, and it's highly encouraged to have serial lactate monitoring. Okay? So, it is said that a lactate of 4 millimoles per liter is associated with increased mortality. Pero, di ba, pwede ka na mag-diagnose ng shock kung ang lactate mo is at least 1.5 pa lang. Pero sa sepsis, ang pinaka-important dyan is that you will do the serial lactate monitoring to check if your hydration is okay. If you are improving the microcirculation caused by the microthrombus, the leaky capillaries, kung na-negate mo ba yun with your hydration. Okay. So when a patient comes in and you are suspecting sepsis, so you check for IV, for phlebitis, kasi baka yun lang naman yung source ng fever nila. You review the duration ng mga lines, yung mga catheter mo, IJ catheter, FemCat, your Foley catheters, kailangan hindi yan more than a week nandyan. Okay? You assess all the catheters and the lines in place kung meron kang signs ng inflammation. You assess the underside of the patient. Mag-log roll kayo, tignan mo kung may sacral decubitus ulcer. Ito yung mga usual na nakakalimutan, tsaka yung mga perianal abscess, nakakalimutan ng mga tao. Okay? So, you review the past antibiotic use din yung patient mo para alam mo yung ilo-load na antibiotic, especially for those na being admitted ng paulit-ulit. So, nasabi ko na to before dun sa circulatory shock, the general principles of management in sepsis is early recognition, adequate resuscitation, and the resuscitation. Okay? So, I will not go into the tiny details of it. Ito lang yung mga mahalaga. So, your sepsis management must be goal-oriented and time-bound. So, ibig sabihin, by this hour, nagawa mo na to, etc., etc. So, at the first hour, kailangan na bigay mo na yung antibiotic mo. Kung hindi, nag-i-increase kasi ng 10% yung mortality ng patient kapag hindi mo ba nagbibigay adequate antibiotic by the hour. Yung mga surgical interventions, ito yung mga source control, dapat nagagawa mo na siya within 12 hours. Mga debridement, mga aspiration, drainage ng mga abscesses, kailangan yan within 12 hours nakukuha mo na. Kung hindi kasi, tumataas din yung mortality risk mo. So again, your initial fluid resuscitation is 30 ml per kilo, but not to exceed 5 liters for 24 hours. So, ang caveat lang dito, now that we have ultrasound na portable, you can actually check kapag nag-hydrate ka if the patient is still fluid responsive or hindi na. So, kung titigil ka na ba sa fluids or hindi. And then, ang isa pang nangyari dun sa sepsis guidelines natin na bago is that mas mababa yung threshold natin in instituting your adrenal insufficiency dose or your rescue dose of your hydrocortisone na 50 Q6. So, as early as 6 hours, naka-pressure ka na hindi siya tumataas, pwede ka na mag-start ng iyong hydrocortisone na rescue. So again, this is the recommended, or this is close to my practice kung paano ako mag-manage ng septic shock. So if still hypotensive like our patient, adequate na yung resuscitation niya, naka 3 liters na nga siya in a span of a few hours, your first line is your norepinephrine. Tinanong yung mga doses before sa mga exam ng mga pressure, so this is very important. The max dose is around 3 mics per kilo per minute. Ang pwede kang starting ng dose niya ng mga 0.1 to 0.3 microgram per kilo per minute, dapat nakakita ka na ng changes sa blood pressure. Pwede ka na mag-start ng second pressure mo if your pressure is already approaching 0.2 microgram per kilo per minute and your patient is still parang borderline hypotensive, hindi pa masyado umiihi. You can start your second pressure na to spare the norepinephrine. So you can either start your vasopressin or your epinephrine. Okay? And then if not hindi siya gumaganda, you will try to get a hold of your ultrasound and do your POCUS. Tingnan mo kung may LV involvement, kung may cardiac involvement, and you can start your dobutamine. Your dobutamine should be started at around 3 mics per kilo per minute. Max dose is 20. Pero be careful lang, no? Especially if tumataas na yung dose mo beyond 10 microgram per kilo per minute kasi magiging predominant yung peripheral vasodilation mo. Okay? More than the inotropic effect. So again, start your steroids early as 6 hours. That's given Hydrocort 50 IV Q6 hours. So that's all for sepsis. Medyo related din, let's move on to community-acquired pneumonia. So yung discussion nito magsi-center dun sa Philippine guidelines on your CAP na matagal nang hindi napapalitan, na update lang. Pero it still holds water naman, no? Practical pa rin siya when it comes to your practice. So here you have a 62-year-old man presenting at your clinic complaining of a 1-week history of productive cough and fever. He also complains of right-sided pleuritic chest pain. The patient has hypertension, is on amlodipine daily. So, kung makikita nyo dito, 130/90 siya. So, baka relatively hypotensive yan kasi hypertensive pala siya baseline. Yun yung mga tatandaan nyo. Heart rate is 90, RR is 20, temperature is 37. So, relatively benign yung patient mo. On auscultation, the patient has coarse crackles on the right and decreased breath sounds on the right base. This is corroborated by your X-ray showing a pneumonia on the right lower lung field and a possible concomitant pleural effusion. So, hindi mo alam lang kung empyema yan or parapneumonic effusion. So, in CAP, in the patient, the most likely diagnosis is CAP-MR, rule out pleural effusion on the right, and this is MR because you have pleural effusion based on the X-ray. Okay? So, if cranial CT scan is to stroke, parang ganun yung X-ray sa pneumonia. You cannot diagnose pneumonia without an X-ray, lalong-lalo na yung mga moderate risk and above. Such that sa PhilHealth, nire-require niya talaga ng an X-ray para may reimburse yung mga CAP-MR patients and CAP-HR patients mo. So, don't forget that. And the most likely organism, the most common across the severity, kahit low, moderate, or high risk yan, is still your Streptococcus pneumoniae. And the mainstay of treatment would be your antibiotics. Pero kailangan, syempre, appropriate. So, ito yung sinasabi natin na age-old na ating algorithm for your CAP-MR-HR. So, in general, kapag unstable yung vital signs, kapag may confusion, kapag may suspected comorbid, or kapag, suspected aspiration, or kung may unstable comorbid yung patient, or you have chest x-ray findings suggestive of pleural effusion, a possible abscess, or may multilobar involvement, automatic CAP-MR na yan. So, relatively, yung mga CAP-LR patients mo, yan yung mga nagpupunta lang na parang may crackles ka, hindi mo na kailangan ng x-ray talaga, may crackles ka lang, acutely febrile, tapos may cough, fever, sputum production na purulent yung patient mo, you can treat as low risk CAP na outpatient pa lang. Okay? Seldom do you see them na na-admit. Okay? Sa CAP-MR, ito yung mga ma-admit mo sa wards. Okay? Ito yung may mga unstable comorbid, unstable vital signs, pero not that shocky. Okay, once you have shock and acute respiratory failure, then you are warranted to have ICU admission. Mas mataas din yung mortality risk nila. So, ito na yung mga high risk CAP mo. So, these are the pathogens for your low risk, moderate, high risk CAP, and high risk CAP. Across the board, pare-pareho lang yan. Nadadagdagan lang. So, for low risk, you have your strep, your H flu, your atypicals, your mycoplasma, and your clavidophila, your moraxella, and some enteric gram-negative bacilli. Okay? Nangyayari lang yung mga enteric gram-negative bacilli, yung mga comorbid, especially type 2 DM. Diyan na pumapasok yung mga E. coli, mga may concomitant UTI pala, etc., etc. Yung mga moderate risk na mga pathogens mo, dito na papasok yung mga Legionella, so may mga GI symptoms ka, plus some peculiar na mga history, and then yung mga may suspected aspiration component, dito ka mag-iisip ng mga anaerobes. Especially, kunwari, start ka ng treatment, low risk CAP, hindi gumagaling, tapos matanda yung patient, stroke siya, nagma-microaspirate pala. Ito yung mga ganong patients na pwede kang mag-isip na mga aspiration component. For your high-risk CAP, ito yung pinapasukan naman ng mga MRSA, mga Staphylococcus aureus, pwede ring MSSA, and your Pseudomonas aeruginosa. So again, Streptococcus pneumoniae is the most common cause of CAP. Atypical pathogens, ito yung atypical kasi hindi sila nag-grow, hindi mo sila nakikita sa gram stain kasi intracellular yan eh. And sometimes yung cell wall nila hindi talaga compatible with the usual Gram-Steiner reaction. So these are your Mycoplasma, Chlamydia, and your Legionella. Special mention sa Legionella, ito yung may mga particular history kapag nakakita kayo sa exam. Cruise ship, air conditioner, water na stale, yan. Think of Legionella. Kapag naman may patient na stroke, demented, nakatrach, altered yung consciousness, alcoholic, katulad nung kanina, think of anaerobes because of aspiration and gram-negative enteric bacteria. Okay? So, kung yung patient mo naman may recent antibiotic use, paulit-ulit na admit, malnutrition, kunyari may liver problem siya, may significant steroid use, kahit 5 milligrams of prednisone a day, it's significant na, may bronchiectasis ka, think of Pseudomonas infection. Okay? So, yun yung mga considerations na dapat mong isipin ka mag-start ka ng antibiotic. Hindi yung nasa guidelines, okay, CAP-MR, ito yung comorbidities niya. No, don't stop at that. Think of the possible risk factors of having those kinds of pathogen. So, yung symptoms mo would be the following. 20% will present with atypical symptoms. No? Ito yung mga nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. Think Legionella kapag may mga ganyan. Hyponatremia, nangyayari rin yun sa Legionella. Sa PE, katulad nung mga COPD and asthma, the ability of the patient to speak in full sentences makes you think na benign lang yung patient. Pero kapag masyado na siyang dyspneic, hindi. Malamang high risk na yun. You also you also want to observe the use of accessories muscles, and kapag nag-iisip ka ng mga effusion, be sure to check your percussion on your chest beat. Okay? So I won't go on to that. Just to say, your atypical pneumonia is not necessarily, your atypical bacteria, okay, hindi necessary na sila yung nagkakos ng atypical pneumonia. Yung atypical pneumonia, pwede rin kasing makakos niyan ay mga virus, which comprises a significant part of your atypical pneumonia. Kasi hindi rin naman yan nag-grow sa GSCS mo. Okay? So, again, if cranial CT is to stroke, chest x-ray is for pneumonia. Okay? So, be sure lang na ma-send mo yung sputum Gram-Stein culture para madali mong ma-titrate down to appropriate antibiotics yung medications mo. You can send urinary nat, especially for Legionella and for pneumococcal na mga pathogens. PCR, if gusto mong very, very useful to kung kunwari, if your patient has a history of parang CAP na before, na admit siya repeatedly, you do your polymerase chain reaction, your BioFire, mga 20 to 25 yan ang mga pathogens, kasama na yung mga usual na viruses and bacteria. Kaya lang mga 20-21,000 yan. Serology, if you're thinking mga viruses, and you can use your biomarkers. QCR-Pre and procalcitonin are very, very helpful, especially for bacterial pneumonia. Yung procalcitonin, ano yan? It's a sensitive marker of two kinds of infection, no? Meningeal and pneumonia. Okay? Sa ibang infection, medyo hindi siya masyadong sensitive. So, if you're looking for abdominal infection, UTI, pwedeng maging normal yung procalcitonin mo kahit frankly, meron na siyang UTI or intra-abdominal infection. So, yun lang, tatandaan nyo. Procal, sensitive for pneumonia and meningeal na mga infection. So, this is just a summary or graphical representation of the medication choices mo dun sa CAP-LR, MR, and HR. So, let's get to with that. So, sa CAP-LR, ang tatanong mo lang sa sarili mo is that meron bang comorbids yung patient mo or stable ba yung comorbids niya? So, for adults, kami sa IM, usually ang nangyayari sa amin, kapag more than 40s na may mga comorbids na yan, hypertension, diabetes, kaya ang mga choices namin, usually, would be your beta-lactam in your Blick combination. Beta-lactam na mga extended yung coverage. So, ito yung mga coamoxiclav, sultamicillin, or second-gen cephalosporin. So, if you're Roxime, mga ganyan, plus or minus your extended macrolide. So, optional yung azithromycin sa CAP-LR. Okay? Optional lang siya. Ganun din dito sa CAP-LR. Pero sa CAP-LR na no comorbids, walang comorbids, amoxicillin lang, okay lang yan. Pwede ka rin mag-extended macrolide. So, or lang yan. Okay? So, pwede ka lang doon. Kapag may comorbid ka na agad, optional na dalawa yung ibibigay mo sa kanila. Tapos hindi na pwedeng amoxicillin lang. Okay? Kailangan may clavulanic acid ka na in the case of coamoxiclav. Okay? Sa CAP-MR, ito yung may unstable comorbids, ma-admit na yung patient mo. So, kailangan IV na yung medications mo. So, IV ceftriaxone, IV ertapenem, ampicillin, ito yung mga not nagko-cover sa Pseudomonas. Plus, an extended macrolide. Pwedeng oral lang yan. When you go into HR, ang next tanong mo na is, meron ba tong risk sa Pseudomonas or wala? Kung wala naman siyang risk sa Pseudomonas, then para lang siyang CAP-MR, but i-IV mo yung mga macrolide mo or fluoroquinolone. So, dalawa yung antibiotic mo dyan. If with risk for Pseudomonas, i-change mo lang yung main antibiotic mo na pwedeng mag-cover ng Pseudomonas. So, your Lutazo, 4th gen na cephalosporin, cefepime, mga carbapenem, meropenem, imipenem. Kung mapapansin nyo, ertapenem is carbapenem na walang Pseudomonas coverage. So, yun yung trivia sa kanya. So, add that with your macrolide and aminoglycoside na IV or IV na quinolone. Levofloxacin is very, very good for pneumonia kasi maganda yung penetration niya sa lungs. Kapag nasa HR ka na rin, shock, unstable yung patient, think kung meron siyang risk for MRSA. Okay? Ito ba ay may line na surgery ba siya? May manipulation ba siya previously? May nag-HD ba siya? So, ito yung mga usual mo na na mga risk factors for MRSA. Magko-cover ka yan. You can start with Vanco, pwede ka mag-load ng linezolid or clindamycin. Clindamycin for community-acquired na MRSA. Pero kunwari may history of admission na siya, go for vancomycin na or linezolid. Okay? Your CAP guidelines would summarize the duration of your antibiotics with this. Pero meron akong shortcut in my mind. Alam ko medyo magulo rin siya, pero kapag lagi-lagi mo siyang ginagamit and lagi-lagi mo siyang inaaral, matatandaan mo. So, ang shortcut ko, for non-enteric, usually 5 to 7 days lang. Caveat lang, if you're using your azithromycin, 5 days yon. So yung pinaka-minimum. If you're dealing with enteric, at least 7 days. If you're thinking of Pseudomonas or MRSA, MSSA, na usual, hindi shocky, 14 days. But if bacteremic yung patient mo, then double the usual. So, pwede yan tumagal up to 28 days. If you are dealing with atypical pneumonia, lumabas na yung mga result ng mga PCR mo, for example, then you can double the usual duration. So, kung atypical siya, tapos CAP-MR ka, usual 7 days lang, gawin mong 14 days. Ngayon, if you're using for azithromycin, kasi atypical nga siya, ang usual nun is 5 days, then you could go for 10 days. So, ganun lang siya. Dodoblehin mo kapag atypical, dodoblehin mo kapag bacteremic. Okay? Tapos, ang baseline mo is kung non-enteric, 5 to 7 days. Kung enteric, 7 days. Kung Pseudomonas, 14 days. Kung SMSSA or MRSA, 14 days din yung baseline. Okay? So, medyo matagal talaga kapag Pseudomonas, MRSA, or MSSA. Pero hindi ibig sabihin nun, naka-IV ka lagi Kapag maganda na yung patient mo, kapag seemingly umu-okay na yung parameters mo, CBC is looking good, nawawala na yung fever, better, feeding na yung patient, off mo na sa ventilator, extubated na yung patient, wala nang pressures, then you can gradually shift to oral medications basta culture-guided yung patient mo. Natanong sa isang board's exam dati, yung criteria mo, when to discharge yung patient. So, nagkagulo yung mga students, hindi nila alam. Pero, madali lang naman yung tandaan. Basta, okay na yung vital signs at nakakakain na yung patient. So, yun lang yun. At least 24 hours prior. So, kunwari, may admission ka, gusto mo siyang pauwiin, or gusto lang yung patient umuwi, sasabihin mo lang sa kanya na, bibigyan kita ng isang day, I'll observe your vital signs. If all goes well, wala namang problem, stable ka naman, and you're able to eat and tolerate oral medications, then I could send you home. Okay? If on the second or third day, hindi pa rin nawawala yung fever ng patient, then you have to consider the following. Okay? Mali yung antibiotic of choice mo, may risk factor kang hindi na consider, hindi nabibigay pala yung antibiotic mo, drug-induced fever ba yun, baka naman non-infectious to. Yun yung mga iisipin mo. Ang pinaka-common dyan is that meron pala tong obstructive component. Yun yung common na nakikita ko na nami-miss out. Meron pala siyang cancer na nagtatago dun sa consolidation, may foreign body aspiration ba siya, or microaspiration na history. So that's all for CAP. Let's now go to typhoid fever. Okay, so you have a 30-year-old male presenting with a 5-day history of fever and abdominal pain. Very, very classic of your enteric typhoid fever. Sorry. So he recently traveled in an area that has poor sanitation and lack of clean drinking water because that's where you get your salmonella. And you have these salmon-colored maculopapular rashes on the trunk, which are your rose spots na mahirap talagang makita sa mga brown people, especially sa mga Pilipino, lalo na kung dugyot ka pa, di ba? Marami kang ganyan-ganyan. Mahirap siya makita, no? Never pa ako nakakita niyan in my practice. Naghanap ako niyan nung student ako, nung resident sa province ng mga typhoid, wala akong makita. So this is your Peritrichus na Salmonella typhi. Ang most accurate test for determining your typhoid is still your blood culture. So you will see those things. And the antibiotic of choice for drug-susceptible infection is ciprofloxacin. No, ang ibang countries kasi mataas na yung mga resistance pattern nila sa quinolone when it comes to typhoid. Fortunately for the Philippines, hindi pa tayo doon kataas, pero papunta na. Okay? So, be wary lang ng use of antibiotics nyo. Huwag yung kanigulat kanan, quinolone kayo for UTI. Hindi naman kailangan quinolone for mga orti-orti, hindi naman kailangan. Okay? So, yun yung tatandaan natin dito. What is the most common manifestation of salmonella infection is the syndrome of enterocolitis. Okay? So, clinical syndromes include yun, enterocolitis, and the enteric typhoid fever. So, enteric typhoid fever is like yung patient natin. So, may fever, may abdominal pain, yun yung hallmark features. Pag napabayaan mo, pwede kang magkaroon ng ileal perforation because of the inflammation sa mga sa mga MALT, no, sa mga lymphoid tissues around the intestines. Tapos mag-erode siya, tapos magpe-perforate. So, from the usual lang na fever, abdominal pain, bigla magkakaroon ka ng surgical na abdomen, no? May peritonitis ka bigla. Think of mga ileal perforation if meron kang salmonella. Okay? Your typhoid is, tawag dito, is, yung parang kilala siya for having a relatively bradycardic patient for the height of the fever. Very, very febrile, and yet your heart rate is still quite low, no? Mga 60 to 70, kahit mga ganyan, hindi appropriate. Not necessarily nagpo-40 to 50 ka, pero hindi nagko-corroborate, no? You have high spiking fever, 38, 39, 40, pero yung heart rate mo seemingly okay lang. And then if you would palpate, meron silang hepatosplenomegaly. Okay? So for the diagnosis, those who have fever for at least 3 days and a positive antigen detection test yung typhidot, those are probable cases. We only can confirm cases if you have persistent fever and then you have laboratory confirmation na culture positive for salmonella. But hindi mo na kailangan naman ng confirmation para mag-treat ng patient. I-treat mo na kahit probable case pa lang siya ng typhoid fever. So again, these are the syndromes of typhoid fever. You have the most common, the enterocolitis, low-grade fever lang, self-limiting, 2 to 5 days as nawawala. Wala kang, hindi ka masyadong toxic. Okay, yung blood cultures mo kapag kumuha ka sa mga ganito, negative din. Okay? Your enteric fever, ito yung symptomatic, pupunta to ng hospital because of the prolonged fever, tas hindi gumagaling with the usual paracetamol. Nagkakaroon sila ng GI symptoms early, constipation and diarrhea. And ito yung mga bacteremic, okay? Especially dun sa first 2 weeks nila. Okay? Your stool cultures only gets positive from the 2nd week onwards. Okay? Septicemia, ito, pag nagkaroon kayo ng typhoid fever na shock, medyo mahirap siyang i-pull out talaga. yung fever niya spiking, very, very high. Yung duration ng disease, depende kasi sa load ng pathogens mo. Pwedeng mabilis to or pwedeng indolent. Okay, GI symptoms, often wala na kasi shock na siyang dadating sa iyo. Blood cultures, there would be very, very bacteremic. So kapag nag-dark field ka, makikita mo talaga yung mga leptospira sa kanila. And their stool culture are seldom positive. So, as I've said earlier, medyo papunta na tayo sa magiging resistant na yung ating salmonella sa fluoroquinolones. So, use your fluoroquinolones responsibly. So, that's all for typhoid fever. So, quinolone for typhoid, huwag niyo kakalimutan. Let's now move on to leptospirosis. So you have here a 24-year-old male medical student from UST. So UST represent kayo. With a history of wading in flood waters. 1 week ago, the patient develops fever, body aches, conjunctival suffusion, so namumula yung mata niya, and abdominal pain. At the ER, he presents at the ER dehydrated with jaundice and no urine output. Very typical for leptospirosis. So bilang lang kayo a week or two after a bagyo, usually magdadagsaan na yan sa ER. On PE, his blood pressure is 120/70. You have clear breath sounds pa, and the creatinine is already high at 3 mg per deciliter. So these are your spirochetes, your leptospira in your dark field microscopy. So this is your leptospirosis, and the next best step would be hydration. So like any other infection, hydration yung important dito. Okay? Ang important lang sa leptospirosis, kahit hindi shock, important na hinahydrate mo siya because of the risk of acute kidney injury. Hindi talaga kasi umiihi yung mga patient na to. So, the gold standard for diagnosis is still culture and isolation, pero mahirap yan gawin. And the first line of antibiotic for mild cases, doxycycline, pero for those admitted, would be Pen-G. Pero sino ba yung nakikita nyo sa hospital na pinipenji pa ng lepto? Diba, ang mapapansin nyo, usually naka-third gen yan ng cephalosporin. Kasi, kapag ikaw ay leptospirosis, usually, ang magiging differential mo kapag na-admit ka would be typhoid fever, yung ibang enteric fever, okay, leptospirosis, dengue fever, yan yung mga iisipin mo eh. At kung magko-cover ka na covered yung lahat. So, ang i-cover mo lang na naman na bacteria na kasama niya would be your typhoid. So, usually, naka-third gen yan na ceftriaxone. Okay? Kaya seldom do you see mga lepto na naka-Pen-G lang. And it will also work. Okay? So, these are the parang life stages or the natural history of your leptospirosis patient. So, you have your acute stage na highly febrile sa week 1. Sa acute stage, it comes mga after about a week or two after the inoculation. So, sabi dito, 2 to 20 days. Dito sa acute stage, you are very, very leptospiremic. Okay, so ma-isolate mo talaga yung spirochete sa blood. Towards the end of the first week, doon na siya mag-start makikita sa urine. Okay? Antibodies, virtually absent sa first week. But your culture should be done on the first week. Okay? Nagkaka-serology ka dyan sa first week mo sa convalescent stage para makita mo talaga kung pwede mong ma-confirm. Okay? Via serology, i-compare mo yung increase nung titers mo. Okay? Ngayon, during the convalescence stage, nawawala na yung fever, meron, pero trending down. Dito mo na makukuha sa CSF at sa urine yung leptospires mo. Later on, pag naging dormant siya, pwedeng manirahan yung leptospirosis, yung leptospirosis spirochetes mo sa uvea at saka sa kidney. So, nagiging reservoir sila na host. Usually naman, sa ibang mammals na nangyayari. So, sa mga daga, doon sila naninirahan. Seldom do you see this in humans. Pero, nagkakaroon tayo ng case reports na pumupunta in na isolate and nagkukos ng uveitis yung mga leptospirosis. Meron tayo yan sa PGH nung training ako. Okay. So, in DOH literature, dun sa mga guidelines natin, ito yung ginagamit natin na pang-classify ng leptospirosis. If you have if you have an individual presenting with acute febrile illness for at least 2 days and meron kang history ng wading in waters, tas meron kang at least 2 of the following, then pwede mo siyang gawing suspect na for leptospirosis. Go ahead, treat as such. Now, if you have a febrile illness, and then meron kang ganito, wala ka pang meningismus, wala ka pang sepsis, tas meron kang, tas wala ka pa nung mga Wales disease na symptoms like your anuria, AKI, icteric sclerae, then you only have mild anicteric leptospirosis na pwede mong i-treat OPD basis. Okay? Doon sa moderate to severe, ito na yung may Wales ka. So, shocky ka na, hindi ka na umiihi, icteric ka na, abdominal pain, pwedeng may meningus, septic shock, confused state, pwedeng ka rin, unfortunately, pwede ka rin mag-hemoptysis and pwede ka mag-pulmohemorrhage. So, these are the patients na agad-agad kailangang i-dialyze, kailangang mapasok sa ICU. So, back to the diagnostics for leptospirosis, marami kang option. So, as I've said earlier, the gold standard is still your culture and isolation. Pero, hindi na siya useful kasi it will take 6 to 8 weeks for the result. So, parang TB, tagal-tagal, di ba? Gumaling na yung patient or patay na yung patient mo, hindi pa lumalabas yung culture mo. Actually, kapag leptospirosis, ganun yung nangyayari, lumalabas yung culture, patay na yung patients or whatever. Ang ginagawa natin usually is your leptomat. Okay? So because your leptomat or your microagglutination test can be confirmatory, lalo na endemic tayo. Kahit isa lang yung kuha mo, if your titer is at least 1:16,000 in a symptomatic patient, especially if whale, mataas yung pretest probability mo na sila ay merong leptospirosis, then pwede nang confirming yun na leptospirosis siya. Pero what we do talaga is that you get on admission and then you get on the convalescence and recovery phase. Tapos titignan mo yung titers nila, i-compare mo kung mataas talaga yung una kesa dun sa dulo. So if you have those things, then pwede mong confirmatory talaga. And by epidemiology, yung kinukuha natin na numbers, no? Yung mga nag-positive sa ganung way. You can also do PCR, pero usually for research purposes lang to. And if makakatch mo siya dun sa leptospiremic phase, you can do dark field microscopy with or without your immunofluorescence. Okay? Dun lang sa first week yan. Okay. So for the diagnose, a strong clinical suspicion lang ang kailangan mo. You don't need the cultures, just clinical suspicion, you can start treating your leptospirosis. Okay? Tapos usually naman, package yan, ang dami nila eh, tapos sabay-sabay. Mararamdaman mo naman na uso sila. Okay? So, ito yung sinasabi sa Harrison's, no? In cases with strong clinical evidence of infection, a single antibody titer, range yung binigay niya. 1:200 to 1:800. Pero tayo, sa guidelines ng Philippines, kahit 1:16,000, 1,600, 1,600s, okay na. Pwede nang confirmatory yun. Okay? So, AKI, babantayan nyo talaga ito sa leptospirosis. Hindi talaga sila umiihi. Such that, ano yung ginagawa namin dyan? So, kapag yung patient dumating, hindi siya umiihi, hindi pa shock, okay pa yung BP, wala nang ihi for a day, hina-hydrate namin, observe, first 2-4 hours kung iihi. Kung hindi, mag-furo kami. Furo 40, 80, 120, 160. Pag wala pa rin sa 160, dialyze na talaga. Okay? Pero syempre, kung may acidosis ka na, hyper-K, nagbe-bleed na siya yung stuff, uremic na yung patient, dialyze mo na. Okay? Yun lang yung mga pwede mong parang pang tide over kung iihi ba or hindi yung patient. Yung leptospirosis patient, ano rin yan, known din yan for having hypomagnesemia na mahirap i-control. Ito yung replace ka ng replace because they have an associated tubulopathy na naglo-lose ka ng magnesium sa tubules mo. Okay? So for treatment, so for mild cases, doxy lang, 100 mg. Sobrang mura lang yan, 4 pesos. 100 mg BID. You can also opt to give amoxicillin or azithromycin. For severe cases, PenG is a drug of choice. But your other cephalosporins can be your alternative. So, cefotaxime, ceftriaxone. So, unlike sa CAP na 2 grams, ceftriaxone 1 gram, okay na nga dito sa leptospirosis. Ganun siya kabait. para siyang UTI na ceftriaxone lang. So for acute kidney injury, renal replacement therapy if with uremia, hyper-K, fluid overload, yung typical mo na indications for the dialysis. If the patient has pulmonary or bleeding tendencies, pulmonary hemorrhage or ARDS, intractable metabolic acidosis, or oliguria anuria. Okay? For pulmonary hemorrhage, dito na papasok yung methylprednisolone pulse. It is said that nag-i-improve siya ng respiratory function, not necessarily the mortality. So you give 1 gram IV daily for 3 days, then a taper for the succeeding 7 days to complete a 10-day course. So for Profi, itatanong dito pwede sa PrevMed, pwede sa IM. So for low risk, ibig sabihin, nag-wade ka lang sa water, wala ka talagang sugat, doxycycline lang, 100 mg, 2 cups, single dose. But kung meron kang sugat, nag-wade ka sa flood water, or parang tuloy-tuloy yung pag-wade mo, matagal, okay? For kunyari, binaha ka, naghakot ka ng gamit for a day or whatever, that's doxycycline, 2 cups OD for 3 to 5 days. Okay? Kapag naman continuous yung exposure mo, pet groomer ka, sa zoo ka na nakatira, kay maraming daga for whatever sa place mo, exposed ka sa urine nila or whatever, nagwe-wade ka sa flood water lagi, then you can opt for the continuous na prophylaxis. That's doxycycline, 102 cups weekly until the end of the exposure. Okay? So much for lepto. Punta naman tayo sa medyo halos kapareho niya mag-present, which is dengue fever. Okay? So here you have a 20-year-old woman presenting with a 3-day history of fever, body pains, abdominal pain, and gum bleeding. Di ba medyo pareho? The patient had a tourniquet test which is positive. Ito hindi na yan tourniquet test. No? Kitang-kita mo na kahit wala ka pang tourniquet test, may mga petechial rash ka na. So yung tourniquet test halfway between SBP and diastolic, gagawa ka ng 1 by 1. Ginagawa namin natin sa ER na pedya. 1 by 1 na butas sa papel. Ilalagay mo doon, bibilang ka ng petechiae, no? Kapag it's more than or equal to 20 per inch, then positive yun na tourniquet test. Useful yun kasi before pa dumating yung complete blood count mo, alam mo na parang assign yun kasi na parang may capillary leakage siya na nangyayari. Okay? So sa dengue fever, so endemic, highly endemic area, season, okay? ng dengue, and a laboratory confirmed dengue virus infection, yun yung makailangan mo para ma-call siya na dengue fever. Okay? Whether NS1, mga ganyan-ganyan. Tapos, kailangan malaman mo yung mga warning signs. Kapag warning signs lang naman sa dengue, ito yung mga signs and symptoms na nagsasabi na may increased capillary leakage na central sa pathology ng dengue fever. So you'll have abdominal pain, more bloatedness nga yan than tenderness. Yung tenderness more on the hepatosplenomegaly na nangyayari sa kanya. May persistent vomiting sila. You have clinical fluid accumulation. You can have pleural effusion or grossly edematous yung patient mo. You could have mucosal bleeding. Okay, you could have lethargy or restlessness, hepatosplenomegaly on ultrasound, or an increased hematocrit level that is accompanied by a decreasing platelet count. So, kailangan dalawa yung makikita mo dun sa CBC mo. Kung positive siya, then you should consider naman meron bang severe dengue yung patient mo. Kapag severe dengue yung patient mo, these patients come in as shock. Okay? Meron kang severe bleeding, UGIB, LGIB, meron kang mga intracranial bleed, or basta meron kang major bleed, or meron kang severe organ impairment. AST, ALT are off the roof, 1,000s, no? Para kang may hepatitis, tapos tulog ka talaga, intubatable ka because of your sensorium, and yun, you are shocky. Then you are on dengue shock syndrome na kasi kapag ganon. So for our patients, dengue lang yan with warning signs kasi meron siyang gum bleeding and abdominal pain. The earliest CBC abnormality is not really thrombocytopenia but a decrease in total WBC count. Take note of that. Pero ang problem mo dito, para lang siyang ibang viral illness. Yung mga systemic viral illness, ganyan din naman yun, di ba? Nakaka-leukopenia sila early on the stage nila. Okay. So, eto naman yung natural history, natural course ng dengue fever patient. So, you have the febrile, critical, and the recovery. Etong febrile, dapat convalescent yan, di ba? Nawawala na yung fever. Pero, nilelabel siyang critical kasi once nawala yung fever mo, dun papasok yung shock, bleeding, organ impairment. So, matatakot ka kapag nagte-trend down na yung fever ng patient mo and yet papangit ng papangit yung mga laboratory parameters mo, especially the platelet and the WBC on your CBC. Kaya nagiging mas intense or mas serial yung CBC mo once your patients get into the convalescent or defervescence na sila. Okay? So for febrile illness, the first week, so you have non-specific signs and symptoms para lang siyang systemic illness. So your tourniquetes would be positive at this stage. You can have minor mucosal GI bleeding and you would observe leukopenia. On the critical phase, nawawala na yung fever mo, pero mag-shoot down na yung leukopenia, mag-shoot down na yung thrombocytopenia, you will have fluid accumulation and signs of capillary leakage, magkakaroon ka ng shock, kung magkakaroon ka ng dengue shock, organ impairment, and DIC. Once you get those things, mahirap na i-revert eh. And then, if the patient overcomes the 48 hours of this critical phase, then chances are magre-recover na yung patient. Actually, confident na ako na i-send home yung mga patient. Kapag 48 hours na defervescent sila, tapos okay naman yung mga labs nila. So kahit hindi pa perfectly normal yung mga platelet, ganyan, pinapauwi ko na, tapos close follow-up ko lang. Okay, so some clinical and laboratory features lang ng dengue, okay, with regards dun sa kaniyang pag-develop ng severe disease. So mainly nakadependent like any other infectious disease dun sa immune status ng patient and sa viral strain. But here, you will see may genetic predisposition din siya. It targets the white, okay, pang equalize daw, okay? It targets the white, mas susceptible sila, mas severe. Yung black, relatively protected sila. Sa age, medyo kakaiba yung effect niya. If first time mo magka-dengue and you're old, it's more severe. Unlike kapag bata naman. Sa bata naman, kapag mas younger yung patient, kapag paulit-ulit na yung dengue, the second, the third, and the fourth, kapag bata ka, would be more severe. Okay? Pero dapat ibang dengue subtype. Okay, you have 4, di ba? So, hindi pwedeng dengue 1, dengue 1. Kailangan dengue 1, dengue 2, dengue 1, dengue 3, and so, dapat magkakaiba to give you the shock syndrome. Okay? So, signs of plasma leakage, again, are rising hematocrit, effusion, ascites. Sa ultrasound, so mag-ultrasound ka, mag-x-ray ka, or shock. Okay? Do not give NSAID because not only that it can aggravate your AKI, pwede rin niyang ma-aggravate yung bleeding mo, gastritis, and your UGIB. Okay? So, for treatment, again, so you have your warning signs. Hinahati natin dito into Group A, Group B, Group C. Basically, Group A and Group C lang yan. Yung Group B nasa gitna, para lang may elbow room ka for mga Group A na hindi mo pwedeng makuuwin, hindi reliable yung bantay, hindi mababantayan, hindi mapapakain yung patient. Diba? Yan yung pwede mong i-admit pa rin. Dito naman sa mga warning signs, dito naman sa mga positive na may mga warning signs, okay, at magre-require ka ng admission, ito naman yung may mga coexisting na comorbidities. It's either very old, very young, may renal failure, may type 2 DM, obese yung patient. Kapag meron silang ganyan, admit mo na yung patient. Okay? But, syempre, no-brainer, if your patient comes in dengue shock, severe bleeding, organ impairment, respiratory failure, decrease in sensorium, then talagang i-admit mo yung patient. So, ang important dito is knowing kung sino yung pwede mong pauwiin and sino yung mga pwedeng pauwiin dapat na dapat pala i-admit kasi hindi nila kayang mag-take care ng sarili nila. Okay, so for Group A, you send home with oral medications, oral fluids, and yes, oral medications like paracetamol na supportive lang for the fever. No NSAIDs, please. Group B in hospital, so you adequately hydrate them. You monitor their urine output, their hematocrit, And some can be managed at home. Ito yung mga papupuntahin mo ng ER or ng AMBO na magdadala ng CBC the next day. Sasabihin mo lang na inom ka lang ng maraming fluids, paracetamol, supportive lang, kain ka ng soups and all. For Group C, dito papasok yung nitty-gritty hydration mo. Hindi ko alam kung itatanong to, pero this is how we hydrate our dengue patients. So 5 to 10 meals per kilo per hour for the first hour, then 5 to 7, 3 to 5, 2 to 3. So 5 to 10, 5 to 7, 3 to 5, 2 to 3. Tapos, kung mapapansin nyo, very, very aggressive yan. So imagine, 10 meals per kilo per hour. Diba? Ang dami nun. So, you will really get to see patients na nagiging edematous because of your hydration. Ang rule of thumb daw dito, sabi ng consultant ko dati, if you think you're hydrating enough sa dengue, you're not hydrating enough. So, kailangan mong medyo makita na nag-iedema sila talaga. Okay? Now, let's move on to malaria. First time kong magkaroon ng malaria, consultant na ako sa ICU. So, we had this patient na galing Africa. Okay, so, doon ko talaga nakita yung mga fever spikes na yung parang nagiging tawag dito, yung predictable na quartan fever, tertian fever, doon mo sila makikita. So anyway, so for your case, you have a 32-year-old, sorry for digressing, 32-year-old man presenting at the ER with fever, chills, and diaphoresis for 3 weeks after returning home from a trip to Palawan. So ang pinaka-important dito is the travel history. So he did not receive any prophylactic medications during his trip, and on examination, the patient is pale and has hepatosplenomegaly. So this is malaria. So, ang clue mo dito ay Palawan and acute febrile illness. So, the most accurate test is, fortunately for us, close to libre na. You only have to do thick and thin blood smears to visually see those erythrocytes with schizons, with trophozoites, etc., etc. Okay? The infective stage of your malaria is your sporozoite. So, as we all know, they start at the mosquito, naninirahan sila sa salivary gland, as oocysts, tapos yung sporozoites mo, i-inject sa'yo kapag ginagat ka ng mosquito, then it will go to your liver, transform into your merozoite, tapos undergo your asexual reproduction dun sa RBCs mo. And then, your ring stage will burst into your gametocytes that will give you your fever. And kapag nakagat yung tao na yon, pwede niyang i-transmit ulit to ibang mosquito and then to other people, causing the vector and the human interaction of your malaria. So, what are the dormant forms responsible for relapse? These are your hypnozoites na makikita mo lang sa Vivax and sa Ovale. So, which Plasmodium species is responsible for dormant forms? As I've said, those are your Vivax and Ovale. But the most dangerous form or the dangerous species of malaria would be the most common is your falciparum. Okay? So there are 5 species. You have your falciparum, Vivax, Ovale, malariae, and your Knowlesi. So your falciparum is your malignant tertian fever. Okay? So your Vivax and Ovale are your benign tertian fever, and your malaria, your benign quartan, and your Knowlesi is your quotidian fever. Okay, so ang tinatandaan ko lang dito, yung quartan fever para siyang pre-post duty, yung tertian para siyang duty post, yung quotidian ay perpetually duty. Okay? Ang ayaw natin sa falciparum malaria is that it could cause cerebral malaria, malaria hyperpyrexia, so uncontrollable yung fever, and black water fever. Ito yung sa sobrang daming nag-burst na RBC, nag-hemolysis ka, so halos black na yung iniihi ng patient because of the hematuria. Okay? Plasmodium Vivax and Ovale may persist as dormant, so dapat kukuha ka ng gamot para i-treat yung hypnozoites to prevent those relapse weeks to months later on. And again, thick and thin smear as gold standard. And if microscopy is not available, which is seldom available, which is mostly available pala, pwede ka mag-rapid test sa kanila. So sa atin, especially sa provinces, microscopy yung ginamit. Dito, nung nagkaroon kami ng malaria sa St. Luke's, nag-PCR sila, social. 15K instant, 50K, 15K. Anyway, so again, falciparum malaria is more serious than others because yung nabibigay niya sa'yo na cerebral malaria and stuff like that. Sporoso white is the infective stage during the asexual cycle, and you will have the classic paroxysms ng cold and the hot stage. Cold nag-chills, hot, you have high spiking fevers. Okay? Tapos doon yung magfi-fever siya every 3 days, yung every 3 days, every 4 days, mga ganyan-ganyan. Alright? So much for that. Let's go to the treatment. Okay, so for uncomplicated falciparum malaria, pwede ka lang oral therapy dyan. Basta mga artemisinin-based combination therapy. Ang meron tayo is your artemether lumefantrine. 3 days lang, okay ka na. If you're severe falciparum malaria, so you have the shocky ka, nag-hemolyze ka, yung mga ganyan-ganyan, then, ibibigyan ka ng artesunate na IV. So, artemisinin-based pa rin yun. So, 1 dose for 24 hours for the first, hindi pala 1 dose yun, maraming dose yun for the first 24 hours, and then convert it to oral for the next 3 days. Plus Primaquine, especially for areas of low transmission. So, kung nandito ka, magpi-Primaquine ka. Okay? For non-falciparum malaria, so mga Ovale, mga Vivax, so you can give your ACT or your chloroquine, and then your Primaquine will target your hypnozoite. So, ito yung usual naman na tinatanong dito eh. So, for non-falciparum malaria, ano yung antibiotic or antimalarial medication na bibigay mo to target your dormant forms? That's your Primaquine. And ibibigay mo yon for 2 weeks. Okay? So, your prophylaxis, your traveler, if you're traveling to Palawan na endemic yung malaria or to Africa, ang sinasabi dito, as early as 2 to 2 weeks before your flight, magte-take ka na ng anti-malaria medications mo, and then i-continue mo 1 month pagbalik dito sa Pilipinas or pagbalik mo sa non-malaria endemic area. Okay? Let's now move on to HIV. Okay, so here you have a 45-year-old seaman for 20 years with multiple sexual partners. Na-station siya sa Liberia, South Africa, and Mozambique, and he had no other vices. So this patient is referred to by an onboard physician. Actually, actual case ko to before. So the patient has unexplained weight loss, chronic diarrhea, and blurring of vision with floaters. So medyo nakakatakot na kasi 'di ba may blurring of vision ka na, alam mo na ano siya, na parang age-defining illness na siya. At the clinic, you note the takipnik yung patient. Sa OPD ko lang 'to nakita noon with SATs of 89%. So ganito yung mga PCP, mga walking talking, akala mo okay, takipnik lang, pero pagtingin mo ng SATs nila, desat, no? So this is PCP pneumonia. So usually, they come in dry cough, wala yung sputum production. Pero very, very prominent yung hypoxia nila. So this happens, it's a age-defining illness. So this happens when your CD4 is less than 200. Okay, so the best initial diagnostic for this is an X-ray. So you would see diffuse more reticular infiltrates. Kasi ang pneumocystis jirovecii, nandun siya sa alveolar mo talaga, sa terminal alveoli mo naninirahan. So, you only get the consolidation later on, pero earlier, more on fine reticulonodular infiltrates yung makukuha mo. The most accurate test would be BAL, pero seldom siyang ginagawa kasi they are very hypoxemic, hindi sila intubated. Kapag nag-bronchoalveolar lavage ka sa kanila, mai-intubate mo sila, wala kang choice eh. So, ang ginagawa nilang dyan, sputum, no? Na stains for PCP, silver stains for PCP. So you start them with cotrimoxazole, the double strength cotrimoxazole, to mga 2 tabs TID, 2 tabs BID, depending on the weight, plus steroids na 21 days. Depende na lang dun sa LDH level nila or dun sa severity. I won't go through that na. Basta important dito, if you're going to treat for PCP, that's cotrimoxazole, double strength, for 21 days with or without steroids. Okay, what is the most likely cause of the blurring of vision? So, one of the age-defining illness na nagkukos niyan would be your CMV retinitis na nangyayari if your CD4 is already less than 50. So, you need to refer HIV patients kapag makakarating sa inyo initially to a friendly ophthalmologist to see if may mga changes ng ganito. Okay, so they are treated with ganciclovir. Tapos medyo pangit yung ano niya kasi pangit yung prognosis niya once nagkaroon na ng damage sa mata. Okay. So this is your natural history for your HIV. So ito yung classic pero hindi ito ganon. Kilala yung Philippines na HIV strain na pwede kang magkaroon ng from infection to AIDS talaga na syndrome kahit 5 years lang, no? Kaya we have younger and younger patients na nagkakaroon. Hindi na totoo na nakuha nila yung 10 years ago. No. As early as 3 years to 5 years, pwede na silang mag-manifest ng AIDS from acquiring the virus. So your HIV happens, your acute HIV para lang siyang normal na systemic viral illness. It occurs 3 to 6 weeks following the exposure. So you can have skin rash, fever, myalgia, arthralgia, pwede kang may sore throat, tapos mas spontaneously magre-recover. During this phase, you are very viremic, no? Pwede mo ma-isolate yung HIV. Dito sila pupunta sa lymphoid organ mo, dito sila magta-target ng CD4. Makakakita ka ng precipitous drop of your CD4 T lymphocytes so they can present with leukopenia. Okay? During the asymptomatic or the clinical latency stage, they are highly infective. And dito sila nakaka-infect kasi wala naman sila nararamdaman, so hindi nila alam, hindi sila nagpapatest. So, ganun yung nangyayari. Lalong-lalo na nung hindi pa masyadong alam ng mga tao yung nangyayari sa HIV. So, you have ongoing and progressive HIV disease. Your virus is invading your lymphoid organs, and dun sa lymphoid organs, tina-target mo na yung CD4. Your CD4 population are steadily and progressively, gradually going down. Okay? While nagpa-plateau lang yung virus mo sa katawan. Okay. Now, once you hit a CD4 of mga 200, which is right here, that is when you start to have the constitutional symptoms. And it's also the time that's when you get your opportunistic diseases. Okay? Ang important sa HIV, kailangan dun sa level ng CD4 count mo, nape-predict mo na kung ano-ano yung mga mangyayari tayong sakit. So, this is a good summary for that. So, you have 200 para masabing AIDS na yung patient. Kaya, AIDS-defining ang tuberculosis, PCP, coccidiomycosis, and candidiasis. But candidiasis, hindi yung oral, Oral candidiasis, pwedeng mangyari yan kahit yung CD4 mo mas mataas pa 200. Kapag meron kang esophageal candidiasis, so if you observe oral thrush, tapos may dysphagia or odynophagia yung patient, masakit lumunok, i-consider mo na i-refer sa GI to check for esophageal candidiasis. Kasi yun, AIDS-defining siya. That would change the ball game. Okay? So the hallmark of HIV is profound immune deficiency from progressive loss of helper T cells. Kaya ka nagkakaroon ng opportunistic infection. So once you get to 100, you get your toxo and your crypto. Once you get down to 50, you get your CMV, your MAC, and your Mycobacterium avian complex, and your PML, your multifocal leukoencephalopathy. Okay? So dito, kapag monitor ka ng patient na HIV sa clinic mo, ano yung dalawang lagi mong kinukuha? Aside from the CBC, you get the viral load and you get the CD4 count. The viral load will tell you kung effective ba yung treatment mo, kasi dapat bumababa yung viral load mo. Siya rin yung nagsasabi kung nakakahawa ba siya or hindi. So, kailangan undetectable siya. While your CD4 will determine naman kung ano yung mga prophylaxis ng patient. So, if your patient is gradually improving naman yung CD4 count niya, pwede mo lang tanggalin yung mga MAC prophylaxis mo, yung mga azithromycin prophylaxis mo, yung mga Cotri prophylaxis mo. So, hindi forever naka-Cotri and azithromycin yung mga HIV patient. So, when to start treatment? Kapag may AIDS-defining illness ka na, or na-catch mo yung HIV early and their CD4 is 350. So, hindi mo iintayin maging age siya. Okay? All HIV-infected pregnant women para mabawasan yung vertical transmission. Kung may co-infection ka ng HBV, so kapag may HIV ka, automatic you screen for HBV rin. Lalong-lalo na kasi gumagamit ka ng lamivudine na ginagamit din for Hepa B. Okay? So, ayaw mong nagkakaroon ka ng resistance for that. And if meron kang mga specific health-related conditions like HIVAN, mga ganyan, mga HIV-related nephropathy, mga cancer associated with HIV. Okay? So, the first line would be your zidovudine and your lamivudine. But here in the Philippines now, ang first line natin and what's available, buti naman is your TLD. It's your tenofovir, lamivudine, and your dolutegravir. I won't go into the specific of the antiretrovirals. I think it's covered naman sa pharma. Pero yan lang yung tatandaan natin. So, you have your NRTI and your NNRTI. The nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors and the non-nucleoside receptor transcriptase inhibitors. So the first line NRTI is your zidovudine and your lamivudine, and your first line NNRTI is your nevirapine. Okay? So that's all for ID, I think. That's my last slide. Thank you and good luck sa inyong boards. Kapit lang and just be steady with your review. Kayang-kaya yan. So, thank you very much.